Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Ms. Barra, thank you very much for being here today. We really owe this hearing to the American people, to GM customers, and to the relatives of the 12 individuals that have lost their lives. And it is important that we get to the bottom of this and to see what the roles of GM and NHTSA were in this, figure out who's at fault, and we want to know who knew what when. And Ms. Barra, that includes you. We're going to want to know what your exposure was to this issue as you took the helm at GM as the CEO. You know, in my district, we have the GM plant. The Saturn Ion has been recalled. That was made at that plant there in Spring Hill. So this is something that is important to my constituents. Those that have worked with GM, I thank you for being here, and we look forward to the answers. I yield back. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Barra, you've mentioned several times in your comments today's GM. So my assumption is that you are going to run GM in a different manner than it has been run in the past, and that you are making some changes. I want to ask you just a little bit about timeline, helping us to get our hands around this, because this is the first investigation we're going to do. We're going to have others and continue to look at this to get answers and figure out what has happened here between you all and NHTSA, and also within what happened at GM. So you mentioned in your testimony that this came to light on your watch. So I am assuming that there was no widespread knowledge in GM about this issue until you became CEO. Am I correct on that?
At the senior level of the company, we learned of this after the recall decision was made on January 31st. I was aware in late December there was analysis going on a cobalt issue, but I had no more information than that. But I can assure you, as soon as we understood, the senior leadership understood this issue and that a recall decision had been made, we acted without hesitation.
Okay, then how did you find out about it? Was it through someone bringing the issue to you to say, Ms. Barra, we have a real problem here, or in doing your due diligence, did you find out about it?
The committee, the leadership committee responsible for making recall decisions made a decision on January 31st. They notified Mark Royce, who immediately picked up the phone and called me.
Okay, and could you submit to us the members of that leadership committee that make those recommendations? Thank you. And then was your predecessor, Mr. Akerson, your predecessor, was he aware of this issue?
Not to my knowledge.
He was not. Are any of the members of the leadership committee also, were they a part of his leadership committee?
There are members of today's team that were also members of Mr. Akerson's leadership team, and to my knowledge, they were not aware.
Okay. Do you think there was a cover-up, or it was sloppy work?
That is the question I've asked Mr. Valukas to uncover, and I'm anxiously awaiting the results from his study.
Okay. Do you think it had anything to do with the auto bailout?
I'm sorry?
With the auto bailout, do you think it had
Again,
anything?
I need to get the results of the study to make all determinations.
And going back to what Mr. Upton said, you're going to be sharing that information with us.
We will be transparent.
Okay. Was there the engineers that were responsible for this, have you brought them into the process? I know this is something that the part was actually created by Delphi, correct?
Correct.
And they have an engineering team that was working on that. So they have a shared responsibility and liability in this entire issue. Have you met with them and with the engineering team that was responsible for this switch?
I have not met with the specific engineering team that is responsible, but I am speaking to leadership, and those individuals are being interviewed as part of the investigation conducted by Mr. Valukas.
Okay, now going back, did you say that this was a defective part when you talked about it earlier?
we have learned when we knew, when the recall decision was made and we later went back and looked at the chronology, there's points that suggest, and that's why we're doing the investigation.
Okay. All right. Now, I think that you're going to hear from more than one of us about not having a new part number assigned. Who made that decision? Was that strictly a Delphi decision, or did that come into the GM supply chain for that decision to be made as to how that part number would be coded?
At a general level, General Motors is responsible for General Motors parts numbers.
Okay.
But again, that's part of the investigation to understand how that happened.
Okay. Does that seem inconceivable to you?
Yes, it is inconceivable. It is not our process, and it is not acceptable.
Okay. I would think that it probably is not. Have you asked Delphi if you can have access to their documentation in their email chain dealing with this issue?
I have not, and again, Mr. Valukas will go, as the investigation takes him, to get the information that he needs to make a complete and accurate accounting of what happened.
Okay. My time has expired. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.